Okay, cool. We should be live and recording now. So, hope
Nice.
everyone watching is having a great day. So, we obviously have a special guest here with us today. So, we have Kelsey Rogers. So, super pumped to just have you come on here and talk because it's just been awesome working with you for the past year. And, Kelsey got started with one-on-one coaching last August, and her experience just like not even just coaching with me, but just her experience with her transformation in general, even before she started working with me, just has been so inspiring, even to me. So I'm excited to just have her on and have her share her journey overall, because I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. But hopefully, we don't have any like internet difficulties, because last week, I tried to do one of these and it just like was not working. So hopefully, we get through the whole thing without any issues. But yeah, I guess kind of tell everyone a little bit about yourself, Kelsey, who you are, where you're from, any fun facts, what your life looks like, family, all that stuff.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I am currently living in Illinois. My husband just transitioned out of the military, and we've decided to make this home. I'm a hairdresser by trade, but currently a stay-at-home mom. So I spend time with my little kids and hanging out with them, going and doing all of the fun stuff about being a mom. And um, I recently have gotten into running, so I spend a lot of time doing that as like an extracurricular activity. I'm a cricketer, so I love crafting and just doing things that are fun, that bring me joy.
hmm Yeah, awesome. So, um, what you have animals, right?
I do, I'm sorry. I let me let my dog out really quick.
Oh no, you're totally fine. Go ahead.
I thought you could hear her barking. She's like, let me out. I have a German Shepherd that I got when she was a puppy, and that's an extracurricular activity on its own because I've never had a puppy before, and she's
Oh
two,
yeah.
and it's a lot, but I love it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it's a big commitment getting a puppy, because you have to be okay with, okay, I'm probably going to be waking up every like hour, maybe every 2 hours to let it out so it gets practice like going to the bathroom outside.
Right.
And then even like when we got our dog that we have now, she was a puppy and we were living in a different apartment, but I was still working from home, but there's like carpet, so I'm like I brought my whole like computer setup and
Oh,
everything downstairs into the kitchen and had like a gate locked up, so in case she did go to the bathroom, it was at least on like the tile kitchen floor and it wasn't on the carpet. But
yeah,
it's
contained.
definitely it's obviously not the same as having children, but it's like a little bit of a step to kind of teach you what that's kind of like, at least at night, having to wake up
Right.
frequently. So
Oh, yeah.
um so you were my very first client from like that just straight came from TikTok. I know we talked about this, I think,
Yeah.
like when you signed up, which is really interesting. So how did you even like stumble upon my page? Was it through TikTok first that you found like like my profile, or?
Yeah. So I had been doing a bunch of like, I don't know, research on trying to find, I had already been on like a weight loss journey. And I knew that what that I was doing was not sustainable for the long term because I was on an extremely strict diet and I knew I just couldn't maintain it. And so I immediately I'm not huge on other social media platforms, but I do love TikTok. And I think I just did a hashtag like women's weight loss or women's fat loss. And you had popped up. And so I just started like watching your videos. And so I started following you for months before I even contacted you because um I wanted to just get a little further on my own. And so I would like use the tips and tricks that you would mention and then a couple other people on there. And I realized that I wanted to actually work with you one on one when I watched some clips of like a podcast that you had done with one of your previous clients. And your response to her doing like to what she said, I was like, okay, this is the coach I want to work with because I knew that I could predict how you were going to respond. Like you were still super motivating and uplifting, even though she was saying, this is what I was struggling with. You were still so positive. And I'm like, okay, that's the type of coach that I need, because I don't need someone to tell me how bad I was doing when I already feel like I was doing bad. And so that's really
Uh-huh.
what just made a difference and made you stand out.
Yeah. So, do you remember when it was when you first followed me? Like how long ago
I
it
think it
was?
it was close to like 3 months, I want to say, because I had just gotten back. I was following you like May, June, and I think I reached out in like July-ish, August maybe.
Hmm.
But it was quite a while.
Yeah. So, you made a really great point, and it's like I don't know. There are some coaches out there, and I think we even talked about this on your initial call that will like kind of be like a drill sergeant that will like yell at you when you're not doing the things you need to do, and
Right.
like say, okay, like do you really want this and that, and like there's a time and place for that kind of like I don't know, that kind of inspirational, motivational, kind of yelling at you thing. But it's very rare that people actually respond positively to that compared to like what the
Right.
movies show or what like some people think they need. Like I've had people who have told me, "Hey, I just need somebody to like yell at me and tell me to get out of bed." And I'm like, "No, you don't. You think that's what you need, but like that if I did that, that actually probably wouldn't help." So,
Right.
um, yeah, it's interesting that there are some coaches out there that are like that, but I don't think most people respond well to that approach.
Right. Especially I'm a little more on the sensitive side. And so I had worked with a coach before that was just a little too blunt. And so
Mm.
I knew what I wasn't looking for.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's like some coaches too. They're so ingrained in this kind of lifestyle that they can't fathom that working out or nutrition isn't as important to somebody else as it is to like
Right.
themselves. So they're like, "What do you mean you don't want to work out or you don't care about this?" But it's like, when you work with a variety of people who working out isn't something they actually love to do that much, like they're learning
Right.
still how to love it, then you need a more subtle approach for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of tell everyone like where were you, I guess, before you reached out with your progress? How far along were you with your journey? And kind of to even take us back to like, because you've lost 30 pounds with one-on-one coaching that we've been working together. And for probably half of this time, the past 6 months, we haven't even been trying to lose weight because like you basically reached your goal. But um,
Hmm.
tell everyone like where your journey started with just like your weight loss in general, your weight gain, maybe like kind of tell them a little bit about your just journey before leading up to this point.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I was a military spouse for the last like decade, and there was a lot of really great things about it. But one thing that I really struggled with was not having control over being told when to move, where to move, how long I was going to be there. And I had gained some weight after school, but it wasn't like an alarming amount until right after COVID. My husband got back from deployment, and we found out that we were going to have to move to Charleston, South Carolina. And I was just like devastated. And I felt like I had lost everything that I had worked for, my community, the salon that I worked at. And I became really unhappy when we got to Charleston. We were only there for like 10 months, but I just felt so isolated. It was basically like a longer extension of COVID for me, because I knew we were only going to be there for a couple of months. I didn't have the energy to go out and make friends, but I also had like a 1-year-old son and was pregnant again. And
Mm,
so I just, I didn't have myself as a focus. And then after I had my second son, um, we started over again and went to Virginia. And I, at that point, had kind of just stopped caring about my health and stopped caring and just not paying attention. It's not that I was intentionally doing it, but it was just not on my radar. And moving to the South, I loved it. Some of the people that I met were the best ever. But um, as far as like food culture change, there's a lot more fried foods, a lot more heavy foods, and that's really where I gained a lot of weight was in Virginia. Eating out constantly, especially because I started working again, and so it's easier to pick up dinner, get it delivered than cooking myself.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I really struggled with as I reflect back is being a military spouse created a lot of opportunities for us. But one thing that I felt like I really struggled with is everywhere that I moved, I was meeting people for the first time and they were meeting me in that moment in time. And so I could start over and kind of control the narrative to a point of, like they didn't know that I had gained 50 pounds in like a year and a half because they had just met me then. My life was so constantly changing and my like personal environment that I was never really like held accountable by anyone to be like, hey, Kelci, you're kind of gaining a lot of weight, because like nobody would say that to someone that they just met because they didn't know. And so
Uh,
I had a really big eye opening moment. I had a couple of small things here and there, but when I was at my heaviest in Virginia, I was over 300 pounds and my foot started hurting. And I went to the doctor to see, like, what was going on. And he was very respectful, but very blunt. And he just was like, listen, this is what's going on. And it's because you're literally carrying the weight of an entire extra person on your body. So you're going to start seeing these now that you're in your 30s, your ankles, my knees, my back, that kind of stuff. He's like, you need to lose 100 pounds, no question. So I'm like, okay, it kind of hurt my feelings, but I needed to have that reality check. And then the second biggest reality check was I got really sick. And in 2022, I was scared because I was very sick and I didn't know what was going on. And I went to the hospital. My husband was at home with the two kids, and I didn't have service in the hospital. So I had like no phone, nothing to entertain me. And I spent about 6 hours just sitting there, like, thinking, how am I like, I did this to myself. I was told by doctors for the last years and years that I needed to lose weight. How am I going to tell everyone that I'm dying and this is all my fault? And I had 6 hours to think about every wrong decision that I felt like I had made leading up to that. And my appendix ended up bursting. They had called a surgeon to come remove them. They ended up bursting and I got sick. I got an infection. So I was in the hospital for a week. And that was a really big breaking point to me because at one point I remember being like so sick that I was like pleading with God of like, God, if you get me through this, like I have two kids, this can't end like this. Like I just know that. So when I got out, I started making small steps to being healthier, cutting back on things that I knew weren't good for me and trying to be healthier, but I still didn't know what I was doing. And I was still struggling with anxiety and depression really bad. And a lot of that was because I was just so incredibly insecure. And I was so worried about how I was being perceived because I knew that the life I wanted to live was not the life that I was living. Like they weren't in alignment. And so, um, you know, there was another small time that it's just a small little like eye opener, as a hairdresser, I had a client who I really, really respect. I think that they're an amazing person. They are in fantastic shape. They played sports in college. And we were talking, and I mentioned something like very casually about like baseball. I love baseball, basketball, and that kind of stuff. And she just kind of looked at me and was confused and was like, I didn't take you as like a sports girly. And I was like, what? Why? She's like, I don't know. But in my head, I was like, I do know. It's because nothing about my physical representation tells you that I might be slightly interested in sports.
mhm.
And again, it kind of hurt my feelings, but it was a reality check of like, Kelci, you've kind of lost yourself. Like, you need to get back and like you've known this person for a long time. How did she not know that you don't like sports? So I had to do some serious internal work and I knew that right away. When we moved to Illinois about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I told my husband, listen, things are different. He's not in the military anymore. And I wanted to truly focus on myself and healing kind of from the inside out. Like, this was never about a weight loss journey per se. It started in having this like moment of truth of like, I live this life, and I say this as humbly as possible, but a life that people would just love to switch places with me. And here I am, so depressed and sad that I'm just bored and lonely and don't have friends and don't know anyone, when I should be celebrating the fact I get to be home with my children and I get to be, here when my husband gets off work, and having those opportunities. Because growing up, I have always dreamed of being a mom. I never dreamed of like a big fancy wedding or having this like immaculate career. I never really took college serious because I'm like, well, I'm going to be a mom. And when we moved to Illinois, I was like, you know what? This is it. This is the time period and the life stage that you've been waiting for the last like 10 or 15 years. Cause I would say that, like, oh yeah, well, once I'm a mom, I'll stop doing this. Once I'm a mom, we won't go out as much, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And I'm like, this is it. And so I have to get it together right now, or I'm going to miss this life stage that I've wanted forever. And that terrified me. And I was really just, I didn't know where to start still. So I was like, you know what? Okay, let's start with what a doctor would say. And I said, I'm taking these medications that are supposed to be helping, but the doctor also says, you should be doing like light cardio activity 3 times a week, 3 to 5. So when I was evaluating my life and like, what's the difference in the life that I'm living right now? And it's not working, clearly. It was like so much not working. And I was so desperate to do anything that I was willing to try anything. So I tried a lot of different stuff, but I started out with just walking and being like, if I'm going to take this medication like clockwork, I should be doing my walks just like it's taking a medication. And it really started to help
Hmm.
me. Um, and that's kind of just where it all got started.
Yeah. No, I love all of that, and thanks so much for sharing that. About your story, and it's wild to like touching on the very first part that you talked about how much of a difference just like your environment can play in the types of choices that you end up making. Like you said, all of the times that you moved and that playing a role in the lifestyle changes you made or the choices you made, or moving down south and like all that food that you had there and how different that was. And then even just the aspect like you said of moving to so many different locations and not having somebody kind of in your life to maybe hold you accountable to be like, hey, like like are you okay? Like it looks like we're not really taking care of ourselves as much. Like it's just crazy how big of an
Yeah.
impact our environment plays in our choices overall versus if you like are in an environment where you're surrounded by all people who are really taking care of their health and their nutrition and in a positive way, and they're influencing you in that way. It just makes such a difference. And then just that like realization you had when you were in the hospital, those like 6 hours of like, I've really just let myself get to this point where like you were saying, I mean, you were having this kind of fear of like, am I even gonna, make it? And is this gonna be it? And like, especially when it's something that you felt like was, completely in your control, and there are like so many aspects that impact weight gain and weight loss where, like your environment, like we just talked about, can influence it, where sometimes your environment isn't 100% fully in your control, like you're forced to move and you don't really have a choice.
Right.
And then sometimes like genetics can also play a role in like how your body carries weight or your tendency to maybe gain weight or not. So there's some aspects that are not in our control, but you sitting there, you felt like I did have a lot in my control and I wasn't taking control of it. And like, like I did this to myself. And I feel like sometimes people have this like big like epiphany or this wake up call of like I need to do this and this is my moment, and if I don't do it now then who knows if I'm even gonna have another opportunity to do it. And like
Right.
for me for me, it was like freshman year of college where I kind of looked myself in the mirror and like I kind of felt like you described you felt where you didn't feel like yourself. You're like, I'm not living as the person that I actually really am on the inside. And you kind
Hmm.
of talked a little bit about that too with, um, I think it was what you said, a hairdresser who was like, oh, you're into sports? And you're like, yeah, like I'm into sports. And we don't want to make changes based off of what other people's perception of us is, right?
Right.
But also at the same time, like you knew that you weren't living, the way that you felt like you should be living on the inside, and you weren't reflecting who you actually were, which is huge. And when you like feel that misalignment in your identity and like what's on the outside, like that's a huge like driving factor to actually make change, the change that you did.
Right.
So you started kind of taking some of those recommendations from the doctor and everything, and um, so you had lost about what was it like 70 pounds before you did like apply for coaching at that point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. I lost about 70 pounds in less than a year, which is, I just became super strict with, I started with the walking, but I'm like, okay, I need to actually like lose weight, or well, the better spot that I got in mentally, the more I wanted to do physically. And I realized that the more active I was, the more energy that I also had. So I just started looking up, especially because even at that point, when I would go to the doctor, they were always pushing to get weight loss surgery for me. And if you get weight loss surgery and that helps you, I think that's fantastic. There's not one correct path for everyone, but I just knew from the clients that I had talked to that had the surgery, I knew just as many that had had negative experiences in the long term versus the amount that had positive. So I wasn't convinced that it was for me. And the doctors, of course, were really encouraging of it because I was so overweight. But I looked up what it entails if you get surgery. And I know how, from my clients' experiences, how it's changed their lives forever. And so to me, it was like, there's no going back. You can't undo it. Like I had one client who was really bitter about it because she said, one of her favorite things was like going out to eat with her family and cooking. And after the surgery, she now has like such a sensitive stomach. She can't do that kind of stuff anymore. Like she can't risk eating out at a restaurant. And it had been like 5 or 6 years for her. And I'm like, oh, I just don't know. I was so nervous about it. So I just pretended essentially that I had had the surgery without having the surgery. And I looked up what the aftercare instructions were, and I skipped forward a couple of weeks because I didn't actually have the surgery. So I didn't need to do like the broths and things.
Yeah.
But I just woke up one day and was like, pretend. And I said, 30 days. I'm going to pretend for 30 days just to see how it is. And so I followed like some meal recommendations from Pinterest and things like that, just high protein, low carb, and then staying in a calorie deficit and making sure that 3 times a week at least I was burning what my goal was an additional 500 calories. So it it was a very difficult way to do it, but I was so at my breaking point that I was like, the second I started to see results, I'm like, I'm just going to stick with it. I do have, a huge amount of gratitude because one of my clients who you also coach now, um, she is such an amazing, beautiful person. And I reached out to her and I think I just sent her a picture and she was like, oh my goodness, like, you look great. Have you lost weight? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, what are you doing? And I told her, and right away, she was like, that's not enough food. That's not enough protein. And it was like very simple. She was like, 10,000 steps a day, 120 grams of protein, no less than 1,400 calories a day. And I'm like, she's crazy because for a long time I was eating way less than that. But she helped me kind of get me on track after the first month and get me jump started. And then I just followed that. up until the point that I started working with you.
Got it. Yeah. And your story, it's so funny, how you described it too, because you did something that was pretty extreme and like in the long run was pretty unsustainable and like you said, maybe
Right.
wasn't the best approach to take, but you at least like you were inspired to do it and to make this change happen no matter, what it took. And it like kind of reminds me of like that freshman year of college, my story when I lost like 40 to 50 pounds because I lost that weight not really doing the approach that I would take with clients now. Like I was doing things more extreme too. I wasn't actually tracking my calories at that point or tracking food, but I was like really restricting my food, doing like 2 a day workouts all the time. I would weigh myself frequently every day and like multiple times a day and like see, okay, I weighed this much this morning. I know I lose like 2 pounds overnight just from water weight losses. I weighed this much tonight. Am I going to weigh less tomorrow? And it's not a healthy approach to take. I wouldn't take that
Yeah.
approach now or with clients by any means. I did lose a lot of muscle while doing that, which wasn't good,
Yeah.
but it was at least like you were taking action and just doing it even if you were doing it wrong. And sometimes like it's okay to do things wrong as long as you're just taking action. Like I know people use the term like messy action all the time and like messy action is always going to be no action at all. But uh so what made you decide to like I guess actually reach out to me, right? Because it sounds like you were taking, a decent approach, at least you were getting results, from it. What, and you had lost like 70-ish pounds at that point. What made you want to fill out the coaching application, sign up with coaching with me versus just continuing to like do the approach you were doing? Like, did you know something was missing or was there a different result you were hoping to get?
I knew that what I was doing was not sustainable for a long period of time. I knew that. And I knew that I needed help because in the past, like we've talked about, I've done different diets like Take Shape for Life or Optavia. When I would stop the program, I would gain all the weight back because I would go back to my old habits. And I knew that I needed professional help from someone that I trusted and that I knew was knowledgeable. And I'm not discrediting people that are health coaches that don't have as high of education as you. But like with Optavia, I would ask questions, and the health coach that I had at the time was just somebody selling the products. They were no more educated than I was. They had full-time jobs.
Mhm.
They were more like an emotional support coach of like, you got this, stay on the diet. But when I was like, okay, I don't know how much more weight that I actually need to lose, but I know that it's not sustainable. So I need someone to teach me the stuff that I didn't know, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is like, I thought I knew a lot about, like, okay, be healthy, eat a salad type of thing. But, my friend that had recommended, eat that protein, I didn't know why. And so I wanted to work together with you so that I could educate myself because the thought of gaining back that weight terrifies me. And so I knew that I had worked so hard for so long. I wanted to make sure that like I never backtracked. And I actually had like reasoning besides just like trying to guess. And I'm, extremely grateful and fortunate that, I'm in a position that we could work together because the knowledge is not something that I could even just pick up the phone call and say, say we were friends, like, hey, Joey, tell me everything I need to know about nutrition because things come up so naturally throughout the day of like just asking a little question. And so I reached out to you because I also knew from the videos that you had posted, and I think it was like looking up when, that hashtag, but I could tell that you were genuine and I could tell that you truly cared based off of your responses to your clients and the things that you were willing to share with people that were not doing one-on-one coaching is what really impressed me because I would pull things from you. I remember seeing videos of, advice on why do we weigh stuff or, do you actually need to do 8,000 steps a day, those kind of videos that I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then the fact that I could just kind of read your personality, I'm like, okay, I think that I'll be receptive. I try and be teachable, try and be receptive, but if like we said, if someone's too aggressive, I just shut down and I'm like, okay, like if I say, Joey, why is this happening? And you were like snarky or something back, I would just be like, okay, not asking any more questions.
Hmm. Yeah. So a big reason why you decided to like, you decided, okay, I need to get a coach was because you had lost all this weight to 70 pounds. And it sounds like at the point you still did have more you wanted to lose at that point too.
Yeah.
But a big reason was that you just didn't want to gain that weight back. And you're like, I know what I'm doing right now, like you said, is unsustainable. And I need to figure out how to maintain it in a healthy way because like what I'm doing, I'm not going to be able to keep up with. And then obviously like to be able to even see more weight loss because I'm sure that was part of your goal too. Um,
Yeah.
it sounds like a combination of those two things of like what I'm doing now is probably not going to get me those last 30 pounds that maybe I want to lose. And what I'm doing right now is not going to help me maintain like the 70 pounds I have currently lost. Um, uh,
Yeah.
because like you said, you can stumble upon losing weight and seeing progress by trying a bunch of random stuff and throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. But if you don't learn like the knowledge and the application behind everything as why something is maybe working or not working, then you're not going to know how to actually navigate things on your own or how to maintain it long term.
Right. And also, what separated you from a lot of other dietitians or fitness coaches was how much that you really emphasized the importance of muscle building, which is what I was also looking for. I wasn't just wanting to lose weight anymore at that point to be skinny. I wanted to be strong because I was several months into, my fitness journey progressing. I'd never lifted weights before in my life before I met you, like ever. And, I was doing all this running and along the way was doing, races here, races there, progressively running more and more. I also wanted to make sure that I was being smart about it and not going to make myself sick or get hurt. And so I knew that I wanted to learn how to get stronger and how to do it in a safe way that was the right way for me, like eating nutrient, eating healthy and learning how to gain muscle.
Hmm. Yeah, which is so important for not only keeping the weight off long term, because the more muscle you have, slightly more calories that you burn per day, which gives you a little bit more wiggle room for how much you can eat and maintain your weight. The more muscle you have, also there's a little bit behind like research behind like as you lose muscle, your hunger levels will rise to kind of get you to eat more to try to eat that muscle back, but eating that muscle back actually isn't really possible if you're not lifting weights with it. So you're just more likely to gain body fat back. So making sure you're building and keeping muscle is so important there. So that sounds like that was obviously a big motivator for you too of like, okay, I'm losing weight, which like not that anybody can lose weight, but like losing weight, you just don't eat anything and like you're going to see this weight in the scale go down, but doing it the right way for it to be sustainable, doing it in a way where also you're supporting your body to where you're you're changing your body composition in a more favorable way, like actually being able to see muscle tone and see, your quad
Right.
muscles kind of come through here and there and feeling strong and healthy long term too is also, extremely important.
Yeah. And I I also, wanted to find an outside source for someone to hold me accountable that was not a friend. Not we're friends, but you know what I mean, like a friend in my personal life or like
Yeah.
my husband because I didn't want to damage the relationships. I when you failed so many times at trying to lose weight, I didn't even want to ask my husband, who is like the sweetest, kindest person in the entire world. But I'm like, it's not his job to hold me accountable. And I do remember in one of the videos that I watched before I had contacted you, I think you said, um, adults do what they have to, children do what they want. And that has stuck with me more than you will ever be able to comprehend, because it was when I saw that I was like, he is so right. For 32 years, I've just been a child, per se. Like, I did whatever I wanted, ate whatever I wanted. And so, in so many different ways, I'm like, okay, now I have an accountability partner that it's not personal, it's your job. It's not, like with my husband before, like if my husband or, one of my friends would say, like, how's the weight loss coming? And it wasn't going good, then I would get angry at them for bringing it up. And I would be like, are you bringing it up because I'm not losing weight, type of thing? And I'm like, it's not their job. And so this is why I want to work with someone. And I know that, your reaction, that you would be perfect in talking to me in the way that I was going to be receptive to.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's friends, family, spouses. They just don't work out with holding you accountable the way you need to for something like this. Because, like you said, then
Right.
like they feel like they're tiptoeing when they ask you how things are going and they're not going well. You get frustrated because now they're bringing it up and reminding you that, oh, like I'm not doing well. And like, also too, there's this aspect of like, a little bit more of like you said, obviously, like, I consider you a friend, like, we've been working together for so long, like, a lot about me, I know a lot about you and all this stuff, but like there's also that kind of like slightly professional boundary too,
Right.
to where also at the same time, you're like financially invested into this too, to where that helps you to follow through as well, whereas if you're just relying on your spouse, like, you don't really have any skin in the game for seeing results other than like the results you're not getting. But I don't know. It just forces you to be more accountable. It forces you to like be receptive because like, okay, I can't be just offended and like go into a different room because Joey said something necessarily, because it's not going to help me long term. Whereas that might
Right.
happen with your spouse, if they say something. Like I don't know, my wife, uh, she always like tells me to try to get her to eat healthier and everything, and I'm like, that just doesn't work. Me telling you to eat healthier, like, or me telling you to work out, it just doesn't work. um so yeah, it just doesn't work with like a spouse dynamic of holding each other
Right.
accountable in that way. um uh so kind of tell everyone then, like, where you are now, right? Like, you started this a year ago and you still had some weight you wanted to lose, but you also wanted to build some strength and muscle at the same time. You wanted to also learn how to keep it off long term versus just doing this like unsustainable approach. Like where are you at now? I know we kind of brought up, you've lost 30 pounds so far, and most, if not all of that, was actually in the first 6 months of coaching, and we've just been actually focusing on building muscle basically the last 6 months. But um, tell everyone kind of like, where you're at now.
So now I would say the biggest change has been my confidence, and that a huge part of that is because of you, and just the consistency, and like proving to myself that I can do it, and proving to myself that, like, I can do hard things. And you know even I've truly learned discipline through working with you, which I am so incredibly grateful for, because I had no discipline before. Like, and I think that that's why I failed at losing weight so many times before is, oh, I don't feel like working out today, so I'm just not going to. And you have really helped teach me that motivation is a feeling, just like happy, sad, excited. And I've learned to do the workouts regardless of how I feel, regardless if I want to. I have truly learned, you do it happy, you do it sad. Yeah, you can skip it sometimes. It's what you do consistently that matters. But I think to myself in the beginning, I'm like, I cannot lift weights. This is not for me. When I first started doing like squats, I couldn't even go down and up with no weights. And I'm like, there's no way I can do this exercise. But then just by doing them repeatedly, by showing up, and the second that I started to see results, I'm like, actually, this isn't as hard as I always thought it was. It's not easy, but it's not super complicated. Follow the rules, like A, B, C, eat this amount, make sure you're hitting your protein. And it was really, really just surprising to me that the hardest part of this whole thing was truly like getting started. And I'm like, I don't like to have a lot of regrets in my life, but I wish that I would have started sooner because I didn't realize how easy that it was. And I know hard is in like the eye of the beholder per se, but I just think to myself, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life, but I know I can do it today. Whether it's a workout, whether it's a run, whether it's something I want to do, say I'm on vacation and we're going to have cocktails on the patio, I can't maybe not do it forever, but I can do it today. And just learning the balance of living your life, like you say, life is for living. And so just truly learning balance, how to give myself grace, but also how to celebrate everything. And that's something that I truly like appreciate from you is even when I would, do my check-in forms and be like, not a great week. And have, like you forcing me to find things to celebrate, tell, about the small wins, and then always just having so much positive stuff to say. It's made me truly appreciate things and helped me grow in so many more ways than just physically. Like, yeah, I'm enjoying that I'm getting stronger. And, I love that my husband can depend on me to help him around the house, not just with like laundry and dishes, but, like we talked about, we're redoing our patio and he needed help lifting these like giant cement blocks. And he's like, I'm going to have to call some guys to help. And I'm like, well, let me just try, and then him and I were able to do it. And that was so empowering to say like, no, I'm actually getting like kind of strong, like was it my most flattering images of me like pushing and pulling? No, but we got it done. And so, just focusing on the positive, switching my mentality of celebrating everything. Even when I had a week that I felt like I was really hard on myself, I didn't get, all of my workouts in. I had my dad visiting in town and we, went to the baseball game and eat stadium food and then, went to a concert. That's more concert food. Let's go out to breakfast. Let's go out to lunch. And I was really upset because I felt like I had failed. And your response truly, truly resonated with me more than you'll ever be able to know. Because, what you said in response was, what I'm hearing is that you got to do all of that stuff with your dad. And although it's not ideal, it's still what we do consistently that matters. You can have one week like that and you're not going to undo 6 months worth of progress. But, as in what you said was, I lost both of my parents and I would give anything to go to a fast food restaurant and just have a burger with my dad. And you made memories this week with someone that you still have. And that itself is a win. Being able to have a relationship like that, to go to the game, create those memories. And it's really put it into perspective for me. With there's so many things and getting sick and being so unhappy for so long. You do a really good job of reminding me that like there's some things in life that like you can't buy, and you can't buy time, and you can't buy health. And so I'm just really grateful that I've been able to come so far and see things in just a brighter way and see like, find the positive, find the hopes and things. And so I'm just really grateful for you.
Mhm. Yeah, so many really amazing things that you said in there, and I think like the first point is that this process, it is typically easier than what I think most people think it's going to be, as far as like the actual things you have to do, like walking 10,000 steps maybe per day or 8,000 steps per day. getting in 3 workouts maybe a week, hitting like tracking your food and hitting a specific calorie range, like in protein. Like a lot of people think they need to do 7 days a week of working out. They think they need to
Right.
do cardio every single day. They think they need to have like all of these supplements that they have to take. They think they need to track their carbs and their fats down to the specific gram and all of these variables, which like some of these variables are important for like health, but like you don't have to track them that closely to be successful. If we're hitting a couple of basic things. I think the thing that is the hardest for most people is kind of like you said, getting started and it just some of this stuff feeling new out of your comfort zone and that feeling hard. And then I think the second hardest thing, if not the hardest, is just the psychology and the mindset around being as consistent as possible despite like you not feeling like getting a workout in. Like getting the workout in actually isn't that hard, but some days you don't feel like it. But hey, I'm going to do it even if I am, like you said, sad or I am a little bit more tired than usual or I am a little bit more stressed. I'm going to do it anyway, not because one workout makes or breaks your progress, but because doing that workout even when you don't feel like doing it reinforces the habit of working out and reinforces that consistency that
Yeah.
you need. And also, like the consistency of hitting these goals when you feel like yesterday you were a failure and you ate a bunch of fast food, like you said, you had a bunch of food with your dad. Like the psychology behind not letting that feel like, oh, I'm just, you know, overweight Kelsey again or overweight Joey again, and I'm just gonna go back to my, habits that I had when I was overweight. Like fighting that psychologically to be like, like that was just one day. Just because I did that yesterday doesn't mean I have to do that today. Doesn't mean that I ruined everything and I can, continue on with my normal habits that got me to this point and got me this kind of progress. That like preventing that self-sabotage is one of the hardest things. So I think the hardness comes from out of your comfort zone with some things and then the consistency despite how you feel and the consistency despite you wanting to self-sabotage sometimes. Those are the two hardest things other than like or versus like the actual tasks being the hard things. And that's why like having a coach can be so valuable because if I just gave you a plan and we're like, okay, I'll see you in a year, here's exactly what to do every week, most people wouldn't be able to follow it because you need that like human support to remind you, hey, you didn't ruin everything. You need to be grateful for these moments that you were able to spend with your family and friends. And like, it's okay that you overrate a little bit. Like, you're not going to ruin things. Or, having that person to remind you, hey, like, it's okay that you missed your workout because you didn't feel like it, you didn't ruin your progress. But next time, it's probably a good idea to like still do maybe half of the workout at least, just to like keep that habit going of doing that workout so you don't start building the habit of not doing it. And those are like conversations you never have if you just even have the most perfect plan in front of you without having like the human being there. And so many really good things that you said in there, and even like the last thing you said about that time with your dad and everything, and it's like I was having a conversation with my powerlifting coach actually this past weekend, and I was telling him about how like I'm feeling really good, I'm feeling strong, and now like this baby's coming in the next few weeks sometime, and I know I'm probably gonna miss like a powerlifting session, and then we have a bachelor party coming up in a couple of months, and I know I'm probably gonna miss a session or two there. And I was like, it's kind of a bummer because I feel like I got a lot of momentum, and he did a really great job at reminding me like you have to be able to also live your life. Like it doesn't matter how strong you are or how good your training is going. If you aren't living your life along the way, then like what's the point? And the same thing goes for like you and the rest of the people that we work with their weight loss goals or their health goals that they have. You have to be able to like step away from that too and enjoy life. And then at the same time, on the flip side, have the awareness of okay, I'm eating out too often. I'm in quote unquote enjoying life maybe a little too often. I need to reel things in a little bit. But it's a
Right.
delicate balance that you have to have there. Um,
Right. Well, and that was the
so
other
yeah, go
thing.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that was the other thing too that I knew that it would be a good fit for us to work together was from your videos I could tell that like nothing was off limits even like and you've helped really teach me that of like it doesn't have to be never again, just not right now. Or, like you can have what you want or eat what you want and then add what you need. So if you want pizza, have some pizza, but then you need to have salad and your vegetables and things like that. And so I really like that that's how your program is structured, is once those goals are hit, the easiest way that I tell people is like, once my protein, fiber, all of that is under control and I've got that locked down, if I have 500 calories at the end of the day left, it could be an apple or it could be a Snickers bar. A calorie is a calorie. And I had never heard anyone explain it like that before until you did to me, that I'm like, oh, so I just have like 500 calories to do whatever with. And you're like, pretty much, like, yeah. And I'm like, this is awesome. Because in other programs that I've done, it was like, oh, if you had one bite of pie or something, you're out of a fat loss phase for 3 days, or you'll never drink alcohol again, or, say goodbye to the cake and things like that. It's like, no, you can have some moderation. And again, that's where discipline comes in of, I can do, it's just having freedom and feeling like I have control still without having to like limit myself, that, I don't have the desire to go and eat the whole half of a pie on Thanksgiving, because you can eat pie other days, not on Thanksgiving. So it's not, I don't know, it just created a whole new perception for me of like how I view things and like events and food.
Yeah, yeah. That last piece that you said is so important for people to realize. Is like like you said, pizza, pumpkin pie. You can have it literally any day of the week. You can have it, and obviously you can't have, or you probably don't want to have a whole pie every day. But like if you are having like half a slice or something or a few bites, and you account for that within your calories, within your calorie budget, nutrition budget, while also, like you said, hitting protein, probably hitting fiber for good digestion and health and everything, like you can have that every day. So it's like when you go and have these weekends, then where someone does order pizza, because you're not restricting it like actually physically or mentally as much all the other times of the week, you don't feel this huge urge to binge on it, because it doesn't feel like the last time you're ever going to have pizza. You're like, I could have pizza 2 days from now if I really wanted it and just fit it in. So you don't have that like tendency or urge to binge on it then in those moments where someone does present it to you, which is like such a big breakthrough. So what other kind of wins have you maybe experienced, um, like maybe mentally, or how has this, like this weight loss, but even just the coaching in general, impacted your life in like other ways other than like just the weight loss?
Without a doubt, like I mentioned before, the accountability and learning that rebuilding my confidence has really come from just holding myself accountable to what I'm doing. And, so with all of this stuff, nutrition wise, growth that I've had mentally, it's trickled down. And I feel like you've also helped me grow just as much mentally as physically. And I like to describe it as like, I was so unhappy before that when I kind of got that under control and learned how to find the positive in things, the weight loss was almost like an organic effect that kind of happened. Um, but definitely also stopping to think instead of acting impulsively, and then just kind of like dealing with it, the repercussions later, but learning how to not feel guilty when I really shouldn't. So, for example, it's like you can make that decision, but just own it. And so you've really taught me, how to own it. What, and it's not just with food, with anything, oh, I didn't go to this event. Okay, well, don't apologize, just own it. Like, say you didn't want to go, not in a mean way, but, it's like
Hmm.
being able to stand up for yourself and then truly like not take things as personal. I used to take everything personal, and it's hard. It's been really hard to overcome that. But, I was thinking about just this last week a couple weeks ago when I was at someone's house, and I sat down in a chair and there was like all of, tons of people around, and the chair had been left out in the sun, so it was really sun damaged. And when I sat down, the whole bottom ended up breaking out and I fell completely to the ground, and I was able to like stand up and laugh and be like, "We got to get you some new chairs, dude. Like this is crazy. What's going on?" And laugh it off. Opposed to 2 years ago, if that would have happened, I would have been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This happened because I would think it was because of my weight." Or, when in reality, it wouldn't be that, probably either way. But I used to just take things so personal because I was so insecure with my body. Another time someone had said, "Hey," I was at someone else's house and they said, "Hey, just a reminder, the weight limit for the trampoline is like 300 pounds." And I immediately was like, are they talking to me? Like, am I not supposed to get on it? No, they were reminding everyone, even like the older kids that were there and the dads, like, "Hey, this thing does have a weight limit." But in that moment, I literally was like super upset because I took it personal. And I've just been able to truly appreciate the things that I used to take for granted because I wasn't big my whole life. I gained a lot of weight really quickly. And then, it was, a good amount of time, but really towards the end, I would stress out about things that I would say like average size people don't stress out about. And I know we've kind of talked about it, but like airplanes used to give me full on horrible anxiety, not because I thought the plane was going to crash, but because I was worried that the seatbelt wasn't going to fit, or I was going to have to ask for an extender, or is the person that gets sat next to me going to see me and be upset because in my mind, I took up so much space. And I've learned to truly, like those little moments now that like I don't worry about that. But even more so, I don't think about my body hardly at all anymore. And that is such an empowering feeling to, yes, I think about it in the sense of, am I tracking my food? Am I hitting my goals? Did I do my workout? But not in a frantic way. When we first started working together, he said, "What do you want to be at the end of this? Like a year from now?" And I said, I want to be able to go into a store, like if I go to a baseball game, I want to be able to go into the store and buy a shirt off the shelf and not question if it's going to fit or not, because for so many years I wasn't able to do that. And I I'm able to do that now. I can just hold it up and say like, "Oh yeah, that'll fit." And if it doesn't, I just get a little bit bigger of a size, but I've just gained this confidence, and I am just so incredibly grateful for it because I am able to enjoy my life without focusing on myself. And it's actually just been awesome and like freeing in a way to not have to worry about, if I go do this, I would not want to go do stuff or take pictures because I was afraid people were going to post them online. And I was like, what am I going to look like? And now I'm like, I don't care. You don't need to ask me. Like, I'm so confident in my body. Post the picture. That's fine. Like, in fact, if it's, a cute candid one, send it to me. But being
Mhm.
able to just live my life the way that I always envisioned that I would be, kind of like a sitcom mom, basically, like, like just enjoy my life and not stress out so much about it.
Mhm. Yeah. That like freedom you get from just like that mental freedom of not having those thoughts take up so much of your like space in your head is just so rewarding and so invaluable. Like I think a lot of people think the end part of their journey is like being obsessed with their body and being like feeling super positive, which is like, you like post pictures of you flexing your back and you look jacked and all this stuff, and I'm sure you feel like really really good, in your body composition and how you look in certain clothes and everything. But like it's not even just about like looking at yourself and feeling like, oh, I look really good, but it's just being able to just not have those negative thoughts is so rewarding and so freeing. And like you said, being able to just kind of live your life, go on an airplane, not worry about, if you're able to fit or if you're going to be comfortable or not on there, or being able to go, like you said, to a baseball game and get a shirt and not worry about, are they going to have like the size that I can actually fit in or not. And like, there are arguments to be made of like, okay, society shouldn't be set up that way. Like they should always have like larger shirts for people who are larger and everything. And like, but obviously like business wise, there's reasons why they don't have those larger shirts probably sometimes. But like regardless, you have that mental freedom to just enjoy so many other aspects in life that like you felt like you couldn't enjoy before. And then along with that, you have that internal confidence, probably not even like, regardless of how your body looks, you probably have this internal confidence too that you built from just, like you said, doing the things that you said you were going to do. Like, I have this calorie range for today, I have this step goal for today, I have this workout for today, checking them off each day, even on days you don't feel like it, like that builds internal confidence. Like, regardless of what the external outcome ends up being, regardless of how your body changes, if your body didn't change this whole entire time period, but you were 100% consistent or 85% consistent for the whole year, your confidence probably still would have grown a lot just from you showing up and doing the things that you said you were going to do.
Yeah,
Um, so tell someone, as we're kind of getting on an hour now, and I feel like you and I could kind of just talk for
all day.
hours and hours on end. But uh, what would you
Just a second,
say
Greg.
to someone who is thinking about signing up for coaching, but is maybe skeptical or unsure, like if this is something that they really really should do?
It it truly is an investment in yourself, and I feel like I'm a prime example of, if you're not, just a second. Frederick, no microphone right now, please, honey. Microphone. Um if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't truly take care of others. And I love people, and I definitely love helping people, but until I was taking care of myself, I wasn't able to fully show up and do what I'm actually capable of doing. And, when I presented it to my husband, I said, listen, I know it's, kind of a lot of money, but, I really need this help because I need the education. And it's also probably not going to be forever. I said, let's see how much knowledge that I can gain in 6 months, and let's go from there. If you're willing to spend money, and this is, I'll just be totally honest, when I came to him, I was like, no more Starbucks, no more going out to eat. This is my Christmas present. This is my birthday present, because I was so eager to learn what I could about food and nutrition. And so, I reached out to my family and I said, "Hey, will you chip in this month for, my birthday? I don't want shoes, I don't want clothes." Before we started working together, I had purple hair for like 10 years, and I was like, "Purple hair's gone because it's expensive to maintain." And I said, "I will make it work." And I truly believe that, it's an investment that, again, it's not forever, but you can truly change your life in a year. And I mean this in the most humble way, but I'm a pretty good example of, like, you can change your life in 1 year and have whatever you want, as long as you know how to get it. And with you, it's an investment. It's an investment into my future, because what good was all of that weight loss and everything if I just gained it back? And so I said, we'll see after 6 months. And then at 6 months, I was saying, I still don't feel like I'm exactly where I need to be, but I also do feel confident that I would be able to maintain it after the 6 months. So I I really, really wish that I would have reached out to you sooner, because, like I said, there's an easy way and a hard way to do stuff. And I 100% believe that I lost the initial part of my weight the hard way. And it wouldn't have even been possible. And I probably would have ended up like sick or something had I not reached out to someone else before you, to even give me that little stuff. Because the more I talk to people and have people reach out to me and say, "Hey, what advice do you have?" And I even like throw out vague numbers, because I'm not a nutritionist. But I'll say like, well, in my experience, I eat, 140 grams of protein. They're like, I thought like 30 was a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it's because you don't know. So you can't be like, a lot of people just don't know the basic things that's like, that it's really just simple, kind of like the higher up wellness guy says on TikTok. Like it isn't easy, but it is simple. Like you don't know what you have to learn until you learn it. And so I'm just so incredibly grateful. I believe that God puts people in our paths for a reason. I don't know why you came across my page or whatever, because the other thing my husband was like, so he's online? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how does that work? And I'm like, I don't know. But I also had seen like several clients that had awesome results. So I'm like, I'm going to just trust the process. And if it goes south, I mean, it was probably going to go south without you. So it's not like, I was risking a whole lot. Like, and I mean that, of course, in like a very positive, grateful way, but it's, it's unbelievable the difference that it can make once you learn to just reprogram your brain and, make time for yourself and make a nighttime routine. And that is, you just taught me so much that it's worth every single penny. And I think that that was part of, before I even went to Jared, I was like, the fact that this guy shares all of this information online for free is mind blowing to me. And I'm like, I feel like I almost just need to sign up so that he gets some credit for all of this. Because you do, you say, I tell my clients this, and you 100% do. Like things that you tell one person, you'll share with me, of just different ways to make it easier or more convenient.
Mhm. Yeah, I love so much of what you said there. One thing that you said was uh, about just being online, and a lot of people like if they're not really if they've never had like an online coach, they're kind of like, how is that even like gonna work online? But a lot of times you actually have like far more access to somebody if it is online based now, in today's day and age, because like if you see someone in person, you'd be like, oh, this is in person, so this is probably better. But like you see them once every 2 weeks, but then you don't communicate with them ever. Between those 14 days, like, and if you have questions, like you can't ask them. So like, the online aspect actually gives you a lot more just access to like your coach or, myself, because, you can message
Yeah.
me really any day of the week. Um, I love too what you said there about like people not understanding like how much protein to have. And like people know common sense things about they know, okay, this food is generally quote unquote healthy. They know that, okay, like most of the time I probably want to choose an apple instead of cookies or something. But there's a lot that people don't know. And a lot of times people will say, well, like, I know what I need to do, I'm just not doing it. And that's why they need a coach, which a lot of times it's probably not the case. And I'm like, well, do you know how many calories you need? They're like, well, no. And do you know how many grams of protein you need? Well, no. Do you know, like, how to implement a maintenance break within fat loss phases and how to implement maintenance days while still staying on track? They're like, well, no, I don't know that. So a lot of times there is more that people don't know that they have to learn. Um, but I think a really big thing that you said that I just wanted to kind of wrap up with was the financial aspect of it. And I just love that you shared how resourceful you were with like finding a way to be able to do this in that aspect, and how, like you used it as a Christmas present, like you said, or a birthday present or this. And that just shows how important this really was to you. And a lot of people will, I don't like to use the word excuse for things, but they will use that reason as a reason why maybe they like don't want to take the leap, because they're like, like I don't know if financially like I can do it. When there's a difference between truly financially not being able to do it versus financially it feeling a little scary and or nervous about it and not wanting to. And like you just explained that like even if you didn't have the money right in front of you, like you found a way to do it, and you found a way to make it like your number one priority versus the Starbucks, versus having like a few extra sweaters or something for Christmas that like, especially within this journey, like, if you would have bought them, you might not be able to even fit in them anymore because they might be too big now. But like sacrificing those things is just a true, like a really amazing example of like when something is that important to you, like there are sacrifices and ways for you to find a way and be resourceful and make it happen. And I think if somebody really realized like how important this was for them, especially somebody who's dealing with health issues because of their weight, if like let's say if I told you, hey, in 2 years from now or 10 years from now, let's say July 31st 2035, if you don't lose this weight, you're going to die of a heart attack, and like you're not going to be able to meet your grandchildren, you're not going to be able to go to your kids college graduation or whatever it is because of that, and all you had to do was find a way to be resourceful for this type of investment into a coach, and then that wouldn't happen. You'd be able to spend this many more years with your family and meet your grandkids. You probably would find a way to like financially do it. And that's what a lot
Right.
of people's reality is that like if you don't get your health in check, then like your life might be over 20 years before it's supposed to, or before it could be, and you might miss out on so many of those moments and memories. And if you're just doing this for like, I just want my butt to be bigger or want this, that's totally fine, there's no disrespect there, but like maybe you don't relate to that example. But if it is truly important to you, the whole gist I'm getting at is like most people can find a way to actually do it. And like, I mean, you just shared what you shared, like that's a clear example of it.
Yeah, and it is kind of the closest thing to being able to buy time and to be able to do it like healthy. And it was really, because I tracked it for a little bit before, because I was gearing up, and that was before I knew how much it cost. I didn't know, but I already knew that I wanted to work with you before I reached out. It was like if it was going to be a good fit type of thing. But, I told my husband, hey, we went to that Cubs game last weekend. That would take care of 1 month of training. I'm willing to sacrifice all of it for it. And things just add up a lot more than people realize. Now that I lift weights, I don't get my nails done. That almost pays for it in itself, because the nails, I just don't like working out, and I run so much with them, so I just don't do it. And it's like, it really just changes your perspective again on just something else. You can't even go to McDonald's without spending like $40 with your family. It's like, okay, so just figuring out a way to cut back, because like you said, it was so important to me, because this life stage that I'm in is everything. It's everything I ever wanted. And so I want to make it the best that I possibly can. And I want to be the best version of myself that I can, because I owe it to my husband. My husband works really hard. He deserves to have a hot wife. Like I owe it to my kids. I owe it to be physically active, and just how empowered that I've become and confident is, I'm just so incredibly grateful for you and for all of the help and all of the, support and pep talks. I mean, you've never once said anything negative to me, even when I was like, oh, I've done it now. I went 500 over on this. It's like, you're just such a perfect example of, like a truly amazing person. And I would say if you're going to work with anyone, that they should be working with you.
Yeah, and one last piece too, like what we talked about with like investing in your coach too, is like doing so as well will save you the money that you're probably going to spend trying all of these like stupid diets or these stupid short-term programs that don't do anything, that just lead to short-term results too, where you just gain it, right back afterwards. And all that stuff adds up to be probably more than the, investment you would having a coach to actually teach you how to do it the right way long term, and then
Right.
that's not even factoring in like, the medical bills that, you'll have if you are dealing with health issues because of your weight. And then, like you said, the one thing that you can't really buy is like time back, but by investing in your health, you kind of can, by giving yourself more years, and not even just more years on this earth, but more quality years to be able to
Yes.
like be active with the people around you too, and not just like exist but not be able to move or not be able to walk, like to actually be able to do things. So Um,
Right.
uh, no, I really appreciate you, coming on, Kelsey. It was awesome, and who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if I had you on again and we just kind of talked and rambled because I feel like there's so much more we could talk about.
I
Uh,
know.
um, but yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on. And any just like final, like really quick last words that you have at all?
Um, Probably just, really emphasizing on the fact that like if you want things to be different, you have to be different. So if you're happy with your situation, then that's great. That's perfect. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But if you're unhappy, there is no reason to stay in a place of bitterness and being unhappy. If you want it to change, then the first thing is you and your actions. And I would just highly encourage anyone to work with you, whether you have 150 pounds to lose, whether or not you've got 20 pounds to lose. Just the knowledge that you've been able to teach me in the time working together, I can now teach my children. And so it's not just an investment for yourself, it's an investment for everyone around you, because the amount of people that even message me and say, like, oh, this and that, and I'll say, well, this is what Joey said to me, but why don't you go to his channel and watch his videos? It's like I cannot recommend it enough. And I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful that we've gotten the opportunity to work together for so long. And I'm excited to see where the next year, goes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, appreciate you again for coming on here and talking. I'm sure like anybody who's listening, if you have any questions, I'm sure like Kelsey's messages will be open. If you want to ask her about her experience, kind of one on one, you guys. So appreciate you, and we will see you guys in the next one then.